All right. Welcome back, everybody. Real world retirement, and we are back locked and loaded. And if you haven't noticed yet, you're going to identify a couple new things here. We got a brand new set. We're fired up. We've had so much fun in this podcast that we said, you know what, we should probably invest a little bit more and make this look real pretty. So hopefully everybody enjoys that. And we're having a lot of fun, and we've been getting a lot of great feedback from families just like you. Some are current clients, some are folks who are tuning in, having this information shared to them. But I want to give you a little bit of background on what this podcast is really about. Real world retirement. I am your host, Alex Pushman. I am a senior advisor here with Foguth Financial Group, and we are headquartered right here in the great state of Michigan, but we do serve clients nationwide. And one of the things I always like to lean into is talk a little bit about who we are really fast and who I am. I've been in the business for over a decade. I've done second opinions for over 3,000 families in my professional career. And through that time, we've been able to build a phenomenal team of experienced expert advisors. And so what we figured out is, hey, you know, why don't we start sharing this information and sharing some great case studies that, you know, can take some of this really boring language and bring it to life for you, and also try to simplify it where you can say, hey, yes, that is something I'm dealing with, or you know what, that's not really me, and that's okay. So on that note today, I have a phenomenal guest. I'm super excited about today. I'll get to the guest in just a minute, but I wanted to kind of give a little bit of background. So today's episode is Mastering Market Emotions. Full transparency, we probably couldn't have a better time to talk about this subject of the emotions that come with these market swings. And, you know, as we both know, usually that's on the downswing. So we're going to talk about that today. But to kind of get to the meat and potatoes, I couldn't talk about how excited I am to hear from Nate today. He is an absolute wealth of information. We have Nate Rohde. He's one of the senior advisors in our Clarkson office. Nate, if you don't mind, I always like to start the podcast out. Talk to me a little bit about, you know, your personal story, getting into this.
Sure.
Why you love what you do.
I absolutely love what I do. As you know, Alex, this is the most rewarding job in the entire world, because you can really make transformative steps in making clients' lives better.
Amen.
Right? And what's better than that?
Yeah.
Nothing.
Exactly.
Nothing at all. I've been in the industry for going on 2 decades, so I one-upped you on that one. I didn't know that you were the junior over there. But I grew up in a small farm community outside of Saginaw called Hemlock, Michigan. As most farm communities, not an abundance of wealth, but enough to notice, right? Enough to notice and make you strive to achieve things when you're younger and you see, I need to do X, Y, Z, and ABC. Went to Albion College, played a little baseball there, enjoyed myself. I went to law school out in Omaha, Nebraska, at Creighton University, back when they were just rising to their prominence in basketball. So
I would say the old Blue Jays.
Yeah, old Blue Jays. I got to hang out with Kyle Korver a couple of times when I was there, because my good friend Joel was on the team the year before.
Yeah.
He's a 7-foot giant. Yeah. So I made the transition into planning right after law school.
Okay.
And I wasn't quite sure how it was going to go, right? Because you're new, you're younger, and you get out there and you just start doing it. Right. I know stocks, I know bonds, I understand what risk is for people, and help build strategies and plans that way, like every young advisor does.
Yeah. And then what was kind of the light bulb moment for you, just kind of as you got into the business? What was it where you're like, you know what, I want to do this the rest of my life?
Well, that was obvious right up front, because again, you're helping people, you're putting them in a better position.
Right.
And I was the best young advisor of all times, right? I did everything absolutely perfect. I talked to people. I made sure that I understood where they were coming from. And I knew that if I built a portfolio around their risk and they agreed that I know that the market's going to go down, it might go down 15%. You comfortable with that? Yeah, I'm comfortable with that. Like every young advisor does.
Right.
So I've built these perfect portfolios. And then 2007 and 2008 happened. And it gave me a completely different perspective on how to think about investing.
Yeah.
Especially for my clients that are approaching retirement.
Right. And you know, on that, you know, think about it like this, because there's really 2 main points that I know we're going to talk about today.
Yeah.
And when we talk about, you know, what we would call, the simple mastering market emotions, which is the topic of today.
Yeah.
We're really talking about fear and we're talking about greed.
Absolutely.
And 2007, 2008, that time period, I know there's a ton of folks watching right now and that are listening. They remember what they went through.
Yeah.
I mean, how many times have we heard these stories? Oh man, I was all into the market and then 08 happened. And I've been sitting on the sidelines since because it hurts so bad. And that's that
right.
emotional piece, right? And so one thing I will say before we get into this, if as we're talking and going through these main two topics of this fear and greed concept and mastering these market emotions and what you can do to transfer some of that, candidly, that risk, do us a favor, reach out, engage with us. Nate and myself, we have an entire team of folks here who are experienced advisors who want to help you. You could have a simple question. So make sure you're subscribing to the channel. If you've liked what we already done or you haven't seen it, please subscribe and check it out. If you enjoy today, which I'm confident you will, please subscribe, watch the rest of it, send us a message, reach out to the office. We're here to support you and help you. And again, there's never such a thing as a bad question. So
I couldn't piggyback that enough.
Yeah,
sometimes people think, well, they don't help people like me, right? Oh, they only help the ultra wealthy.
Right.
Well, that might be true in some instances, but also some of my best and my favorite clients are the people that I can really help improve their life by doing small things that are very implementable.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, we probably have 50 clients we could talk about where just adjusting their Social Security claiming strategy.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It makes all the difference.
Making a little adjustment of risk here and there throughout the rest. So yes,
absolutely.
Amen. So long story short, we got two great case studies or stories I want to talk about. First one, where would you like to start? Fear or greed?
I think it's fear. Let's rewind the clock back to 2007 and 8 again. And like I said, I was hotshot new advisor. I know everything and built awesome portfolios and I'm so smart. And then the market came crashing down. And somebody that I love to this day, I was honored to be their portfolio manager. And I did everything correctly by the book, like every advisor talks to you about and does. And then it came crashing.
Mm-hmm.
This person was 2 years away from retirement. I knew that. They knew that. Market goes down. He loses 20%. Very detail-oriented guy, too. Calls me up. Nate, we have to have a conversation. Not a problem. I'll be there in a little bit. So drove over to their house at the time, right? That's how you do stuff when you start out.
Yep.
Luckily, we have nice offices here. Drove over to their house, 2.5 hours talking about spreadsheets and details and stick with the plan. It's all part of it. It's going to be okay. And then what happened? Market didn't stop bleeding, did it?
It did not.
Kept going down again. Of course, a couple weeks later, get the phone call. We got to go over this one more time. Because he trusted me, right? I was doing everything right. He trusted me. Great. Went through everything again, another 2.5 hours. Third time he didn't call me. Right. Sold out. So he sold low. Was too afraid to get back in the market like you saw so many people do and didn't experience a rebound.
Correct.
So in retrospect, after that few years of everybody bleeding to death, right? As an advisor and somebody that knows that they're going to do this for the rest of their life, what could I have done better?
Yeah.
Because that was my fault.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That was my fault. I did not address the real elephant in the room. And it was my fault that he had to work 3 more years.
Interesting.
Right?
Yeah.
If I would have been a better advisor and done the things I did today, never would have happened.
Interesting. So in that situation, they're 2 years out.
Yep.
Right. And purely based on fear, that individual said, listen, I can't take any more losses. I'm out, moves to cash. And because of that single decision, he was forced to work 3 more years.
That's right. It's still a client to this day.
Yep.
Right. Never put any blame on me.
Right.
Like I blame myself for that.
Right.
Right.
And well, again, I think any successful person in any field, I think we can all agree to that, is if you're the leader of the team, you're taking it, you're falling on the sword saying, where can I get better? How can I make sure this doesn't happen again to what you can and can't?
That's right. So developing different strategies in order to address that upfront, as you know, when the retirement date is.
Yeah.
Right. Essentially, you have to put what I call the 3 pools of assets into place.
Right.
Right. So you have to have the emergency fund, right? You have to have cash. Roof collapses. We got to write a check. That's got to be there. Right.
Absolutely. It does.
And what I concentrated on when I was younger and on the markets is the growth.
Right.
Hey, man, we're going to make as much money as possible. We understand this. Let's pedal to the metal. What I learned from that event is the preservation pool is equally as important.
Absolutely.
Especially when you have that date and you want to preserve that retirement date. We got to philosophically change how we're thinking.
Right.
Right.
And it's similar to, like, let's say somebody sits down with you and say, hey, I'm buying a house in 6 months.
Yeah.
Right. I'm not taking their down payment and throwing the S&P 500.
That'd be bananas.
We're going to put in a 6-month CD. We're going to put in a money market, right? Low to no risk. Let us leverage the money. But to your point, you're looking at saying, hey, this person's 2 to 3 years out from retirement.
Yep.
Does it make sense for us to take risk with the whole enchilada? Probably not.
Not very often does it.
Yeah.
Now, everybody's different. Some
Absolutely.
people love taking on risk.
Absolutely.
Some people have to take on risk because they didn't save enough. Right? People take on risk because they have to or want to.
Mm-hmm.
Which one are you?
Yeah.
Right?
So on that of the fear piece, and maybe it bleeds right into the second story.
Yeah.
What would be things that you would do differently, and or maybe that's again leading right into the other side of the fence? But what things do you do differently now to help families and clients not make those same mistakes?
Yeah, one thing, and I know you agree with this, is we have to make sure we have a solid and predictable income strategy put in place. That is the single most important thing as you prepare for retirement.
Couldn't agree more.
However you do it, if you're using dividends and yields, great. If you have pensions, great. If you have Social Security coming in that meets your expenses, wonderful. Do we have rentals? Like some people love being landlords? Great. How does that fit into the plan? Do we have an annuity discussion? Maybe.
Yeah.
Right? There's all types of different ways, but what is your plan? And let's make sure we solidify it.
Yeah. So income planning is one of the easiest ways. And again, and I know just because I know enough about how you do business, and again, we're in kind of the same neck of the woods.
Yeah.
Is we create an income plan that's going to give us a desired rate of return. Right.
Yeah.
And not necessarily, I shouldn't say a desired, a minimum rate of return.
Yeah. Predictable and consistent. That's not tied to the madness.
There you go.
Right.
There you go. And so, okay, we have this risk pool, growth pool, and then we have this safety, emergency, protected growth, whatever somebody wants to call it.
After you do the income strategy, great. Now we have all these extra assets left over. Do we want all that tied to the whims of the market?
Right.
Maybe.
Right.
And if not, what do we do with it? Do we buy CDs? Right.
Yeah. And so I think that's something important to talk about. And again, just, kind of throw it out to the people. It's like, if you're one of those people, because I have, these stories too. And I can, as you're talking, I'm thinking of these different people and families that I've met with and worked with over the years. You're 2 years out from retirement. You're a year out. I just got off the phone the other day. One of my great clients I've been working with for about 10 years. He's retiring in April.
Cool.
It's exciting.
Yeah.
But it's also fearful for the person, right? They're going into a place where they've never been.
Mm-hmm.
Now they have to use their life savings. The paycheck stops, right? Because you have to put yourself in that frame of mind.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're somebody who's about to go through this process, and or you're kind of sitting on the situation, am I good? Am I not good? Again, I'm going to encourage you, reach out, get some questions answered, because to Nate's point, the number one solve to that is an income plan and having a sound financial plan where everything's talking to each other.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. And then after the income plan, you have your asset preservation pool.
Right.
And then, hey, have we talked about legacy planning yet? Right? Are we protecting against taxes? Yes. Are we protecting against yourself?
Yeah.
Right? Because sometimes the detriment is the person looking you in the mirror.
Hey, oh man, I when people say, hey, I'm going to run out of money, that's one of the first things I talk about. I'm like, well, listen, here's the 2 most common ways I've experienced people running out of money, because I'm the first person that somebody's going to call when something happens, right? Good, bad, or indifferent. Is number one, they have a hard time. They don't have a plan. So they have no idea if their current plan or spending habits are going to put them in a good or a bad spot.
Right.
Zero awareness. The second is, a lot of times I see when people can't cut off their kids. That's sometimes one of the ones I see, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Okay. So the main thing for you is, hey, when we talk about these emotions and the fear piece, is number one, understanding the true meaning of diversification.
Right.
Absolutely.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Okay.
That's right.
And
the key is, if we take care of the income, so you can do whatever on God's green earth you want to do, right? And we take care of the asset, like kind of protection, you can withstand anything in the market.
Correct.
Right? Anything.
Correct. All right. So diversification, having a sound income stream. Now, what about the second story you brought for me. Let's jump into that one because I feel like they're kind of tied to each other a little bit.
They are tied to each other greatly, right? Equally powerful. Fear, greed, equally powerful.
Yes.
Equally detrimental to a well put together plan, right? They will destroy it.
Absolutely.
Destroy it.
Absolutely.
And the second one came roughly the same time, right? 2008 was such a catastrophe that the emotions still ride inside of me. But 2008, 9, somewhere in there, GM guys. Hey, I work for the company. $1.25 a share right now. I'm going to put all my retirement into GM. Hold on. That's not very smart. One, put all your eggs in one basket because that's legitimately all your eggs in one basket, right? Like, no. I work there. I look at the books or whatever they did, whether they're a factory worker or an executive, right? I've helped everybody. I'm going to do it. I don't think that's a good idea. And here's why. Great. They ignore me. Ford guy comes in an hour later. Same thing, right? $1.25 a share. I work for the company. I know that this is going to go great. It's not going to be a problem whatsoever. I don't think it's a good idea. Same things. So 2 scenarios right there. GM guy thinks I'm a genius. Gave him good advice. Ford guy thinks I'm a moron. Still gave him good advice because you shouldn't do things like that.
Right. The all the eggs in one basket thing. And a lot of people, I think, misunderstand that. Yeah. When they hear that, they're like, oh, I got to go set up an account with 30 companies.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, and I know this is and a lot of this comes from the Great Recession, right? There's like kind of that mentality. Hey, I need to have 10 bank accounts. I need to have an E-Trade, a JP Morgan, a Charles Schwab, and a Fidelity account. Just because you have different accounts, folks, that doesn't mean you have diversification. Right. It's the investments inside of those accounts, right? And so you get this other person who's more onto the greed.
Yeah.
Right.
Greed.
So kind of walk me through that story.
So they have their spreadsheets. They follow Uncle Warren Buffett, just be in the S&P.
Yep.
Right? Yep. It'll take care of itself.
Yep.
Right? I know I can take how much out of my portfolio every year?
Right.
4%, which is a fallacy. Rule. If you follow that rule, please talk to me. We'll talk about all the ways that that's crazy. But this is the person that is just pedal to the metal because they love watching it go up.
Yes.
Right? Or like in the 2010s, there was a string of 3 or 4 years, the biotech funds were earning 30, 40% a year. I had a client come in, 100% of his money in biotech. I'm going to leave it in there. We need to do better diversification. I talked to you about the 3 pools and all this stuff, and just ignore me.
Yeah.
No, I know what I'm doing. And he slid my proposal away from me. I don't need you. Well, the next 3 years, biotech was down about 30, 35%. And that always makes me think, man, just a little tweak, and he could have kept all that money. Right. And again, was that my fault that he didn't? Maybe I should have been better communicating why it was important.
Right.
But just those drive me crazy.
Well, and I appreciate the ownership of it because to your point, you have this fear conversation, you have this greed conversation, and they're very similar but polar opposites, right?
Completely.
It's the yin and the yang. I could tell you 10 different stories about the greed conversation. It's usually the client would be like, oh, well, I know we did 24% last year, but my buddy told me he got 38.
I know. I can't believe his buddy wins every time at the
amazing.
casino too.
Exactly. It's the casino thing, right? Yeah. The guys who win and lose at the casino, they're only telling you about the wins.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it's like the day traders. They're like, well, I got this friend. He's a day trader. And, he's making like 40, 50% a year. I'm like, yeah, he's not telling you about the losses either. And again, do those people exist? Sure. It's just, it's not that easy.
I've helped over 500 households in my life. I can count on one hand the people that are doing it correctly. Right. It's not because my other clients are dumb. No, I had professors from the University of Michigan Ross School of Business that seek my guidance, right? Like, that's not the reason. The reason is it takes time, it takes will, and a whole lot of skill.
Amen.
And you got to have all 3 of them.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we get into that greed conversation, what are some things that you've done and kind of wrapping up the GM Ford thing?
Yeah.
So the GM.
Yeah, they went under. So they lost. The person that did that would have lost everything. So that's why he thinks I'm a genius.
And you did diversify it.
Right.
Now the Ford gentleman did not diversify?
No, they did also.
Okay.
But
okay, good.
From time to time, he brings up the fact that, well, if I would have just did what I said I was going to do, I would have been a millionaire.
Went up to 16 a share.
Right.
Yeah,
what are we talking about?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, I hear you. Cause I have that same story. I mean, again, growing up in the Michigan area, I had a client, same story.
Yeah.
He had about $650,000 in his 401k, had it all into GM. Then they went through the whole bankruptcy thing with the big three. And literally overnight, his story was that his account was worth $650,000. As soon as all that took place, he basically got a letter in the mail and said, "Hey, it's worth $60,000."
Yeah.
And he was already retired.
Yeah. Just completely destroyed the plan.
Had to go back to work.
Crazy.
And those are the type of events where, to your point, it's like I could list off 20 different examples that are just running through my head right now of folks who work at great companies, right?
Yeah.
They've done well. Tesla, Eli Lilly, I could go on and on and on. And that's phenomenal. But sometimes you got to take a little bit off the top.
Yep.
Diversify, look at the grand scheme of things. Because a lot of times you'll ask somebody like, "Hey, what's your risk tolerance?" Right?
They don't know.
And they're like, "Well, 5 out of 10.
Right.
6 out of 10. Right? I'm in the middle."
What does that even mean?
Exactly. And then so what I'll always ask, I'll say, "Okay, well, what's the maximum amount of money you're comfortable losing this year?"
Oh, yeah.
And you go down that path, and it usually will spark a quarter where you're like, "Wait a minute."
Yeah.
And then you pull, and then you do our process of analyzing the risk. And they come out at their current holdings are a 75, right, out of 100, and they're a moderately aggressive or aggressive investor. Yet they just told me they were a 2 out of 10, and they should technically be 3-4 times less risky. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's tough. So what's kind of a best practice for you on educating people on what that looks like to start that diversification process? Is there a certain timeline you use? Hey, you're X out from retirement. What's kind of your process?
Everybody's different.
Right.
Like what? And this, like after 20 years in the industry doing this, every single person you talk to is different. I have a 97-year-old lady that calls me all the time, said, "I need a new stock to buy. Pedal to the metal. Pedal to the metal. Golf's every Tuesday." God bless her, right?
Right.
And I have a 35-year-old couple that can't stand the idea of them losing 1 cent.
Yeah.
Like, are either of those two people wrong? No. But the process is taking the time to understand who those people are. Right. So in 2010s, developed the 3 pools that I talked through. Every client does it. Even if they don't implement it, hey, this is what the goal is. This is what the goal is. And then 2020 happened. Right. Literally overnight, boom, nobody can move 40% down. 500 plus people I've helped, zero panic phone calls.
That's a big deal.
That's a huge deal to me.
That's
right.
A very big deal.
One, if I could go back to my younger self who was beating himself up, it's like, hey man, you're doing it. You're building proper plans now, right? Really important. 2, knowing that those families are secure.
Yeah.
Right. Knowing those families are safe and that they're sticking with the plan because it's successful. That's the biggest gratification in the world.
And I love that because we've seen it all because we deal with this all day, every day. And we talk to so many different families of so many different walks of life. But you have this fear and you have this greed conversation. And then it's a simple educational process to help them understand what their options are to diversify their portfolio. And then now all of a sudden you fast forward. And what was scary is, if you looked at like the VIX index, right? Basically, it monitors options trading, and we call it the fear index in our business. It basically tells us when people are freaking out. Okay. And if you watch that index, the last time, 2020, the last time it got as bad as 2020 during COVID was 2008.
Yep.
And so you look at them and they almost mirror each other. And to your point, the difference is you didn't get one single phone call. Nobody was freaking out. And you provided these folks peace and purpose with their money, right? You had a plan.
We had a plan. We implemented the plan. And those that didn't want an "I told you so" from me, which I would never do. I would never do that.
Right.
But guess what? When we took $6 trillion, threw it at the problem, and the market went screaming back up, they put some pieces into place after that.
Yes,
right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, that's great. Any other kind of closing thoughts or I'd say education for people listening to kind of connect the dots for them if maybe they're in this situation and they're going through these thought processes and things that they can do outside of obviously reaching out and talking to us and getting some real education, because that's the best. But any kind of bullets or nuggets you would provide.
If you think that you've made it and you've won the game and you've saved enough, and it's time for retirement, go talk to an advisor. Of course, we want you to come here, right? But go talk to somebody out in the universe that just can help you keep that money,
Right.
right? Because it's not what you earn, it's what you keep.
Yeah, man.
Right?
I love that. I
Yeah.
love that. And I think that's a great segue. And, first and foremost, I want to thank everybody for tuning in and listening to the podcast. Nate, you're a wealth of information, over
thanks.
20 years in the business. When you see it all, experience matters.
It definitely matters.
I always talk about that. It's like, listen, I could read it in a book, but until you go through it in a real life scenario, it doesn't really land. Right.
Yeah, when there's real emotions on the line, right?
Right.
And we have to be able to control those things.
Right. So thank you for coming.
I appreciate you having me. Thank you.
Absolutely. It's been an absolute pleasure. If you are one of those folks out there who needs to feel a little bit more education, who is thinking about retiring, and or you might feel like, hey man, this market correction is scaring me, right? Because again, when we're sitting in here in the recording of this, the market's not looking phenomenal right now. And so there's probably some emotions you're going through. Do not make emotional decisions. People pay us to have plans in place to avoid those emotional greed and fear emotions that you're going to deal with when it comes to your life savings. So number one, I want to thank everybody for tuning in. I hope you learned something new today, got you thinking. Also, I want to, again, encourage you to engage with us. Follow us on Facebook, YouTube, like our channels. We're going to continue to bring you great topics like this. And I can say from personal experience and personal feedback from the families I've worked with, the best way to do that is have a unique plan put together for you. We're happy to do that. Those are the things we do for families every week. You need somebody you can trust. You need somebody who's an expert. So I want to thank you for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed it. Again, Nate, thank you for joining me today. And we'll look forward to tuning in next time. Make sure you don't miss it. Follow us, subscribe. We're going to keep sending this stuff out. And again, feel free to message us, reach out. We're here as support to you. So God bless you. Thanks for joining Real World Retirement.
Advisory services provided by Foguth Wealth Management, LLC, an SEC registered investment advisor. For additional information, visit advisorinfo.sec.gov and search 327-434.